What's up, guys? Alex Huang here with Scott Fawcett, and in this video, we wanted to get together today to make a nice, robust, eloquent, hopefully, video where we explain a lot of the features of Decade, both for players and coaches. I think that oftentimes Scott and I get questions related to kind of maximizing all of the functionality and features in Decade, and we just wanted to make a video to highlight sort of the tools that are at your disposal that some people may not know and illustrate how some of the top programs and top coaches in the country are leveraging a lot of the features to up their performance.
Yeah, I mean, because when Alex sent me this deck, even I was like, man, I didn't realize it does some of these things. It's pretty cool. But we obviously have a lot of conversations with many of the best college coaches, in the game. And this is how they tell us that they use the app. And for our just normal decade members that are watching, obviously this is going to be somewhat geared, a few of the slides towards how college coaches see their entire player's dashboard. But all of these features are available to you also. And I definitely think this is worth the 45 minutes, hopefully, that this video is going to be to show you how to really use the Decade app to its fullest capability. Because there's a lot more to it than honestly even I realized at the end of the day.
Yeah, so to get started, I have a quote here from Scott. Scott, do you want to discuss this a bit?
Yeah, so when I first created Decade back in 2014, I was talking with a few of the college coaches at like the US Junior and US Amateur, and one of them was Alan Bratton. I've simply known him because we're the exact same age since, high school, junior golf, college golf. And I basically asked Alan, can I come up and show you what it is that I'm teaching? And he said, absolutely. I'd love to really learn more about it. And afterwards, I just said, like, I'm not asking for an endorsement, any sort of a paid endorsement. Just if you think that was good, can you just give me some sort of a recommendation for players? And I could not believe what he turned around and sent back to me. But the Decade system quantifies the strategy that I have observed at the highest levels of amateur and professional golf over my career. It's a simple way of explaining what we've taught our players at Oklahoma State for years. Anyone who wants to shoot lower scores should check it out. And the reason I really like that quote is I would not expect a guy like Alan Bratton, who won an NCAA title in college, played on the PGA Tour, and now has coached two of the last six or seven NCAA team champions. I wouldn't expect him to say, like, oh my God, I've never thought of this. This totally blows my mind. I'm trying to figure out how to teach you what these great coaches and players have always known. And the one thing that I'll say is, I'm not going to say that I was a great player, but I was pretty darn close to playing on the PGA Tour, and I never understood this stuff. And so, really grasping that the guys who do make it, it's a bit of a survivorship bias where I'm not going to say Alan made it because he understood course management better than me, but that was a big component of it. And my canned joke always is if you feel like you should have shot lower every time you play, you're either not as good as you think you are, or you made mental and strategic mistakes. And it's probably a combination of both. Unfortunately, a lot of mine was mental mistakes because I was a lunatic. But what we're really trying to teach you with Decade is how to work your way around a golf course, making emotionless decisions, checking out of expectations, and just playing good, solid golf. So I could not have asked for a better quote from Alan, and I really appreciate everything he's done for me over the years. And obviously, congratulations on winning yet another NCAA title this year.
Now, a lot of people might, ask why Decade? What kind of makes Decade stick out relative to all of the competition out there? And I always say the beauty of Decade is we help teach your players, your coaches on the reasons as to why we are taking certain targets off the tee or understanding shot dispersion, shot patterns, all of that stuff. And, coaches are only able to be at one place at one time. You got five, if not more players on the course at any time. And it's about making sure that your kids know how to arrive at the proper decisions, and that's kind of what Decade is all about. We've got a stats portal, that's great, but really it's about education. It's about teaching players how to make sound decisions.
Yeah, I
And
mean, and that's exactly correct. I could have just sold a video series when I was first creating this, but I realized people are going to need constant reinforcement of these ideas. They're just, if it's going to be, if they're going to binge watch it, if you're the kind of person that thinks buying a golf stats portal and strategy portal is a good idea, you're going to love this. And so you're just going to nerd out and binge watch the content, which means you're not going to retain it as much as you should. And that's the whole reason I partnered with the stats portal. So that way we could start delivering you weekly content based on your stats that you're, and we're going to get in this here in a little bit, but the stats area where you're making too many bogeys on par fives or doubles or whatever it is, we can start directing content to you based on your players or your deficiencies. And so it was kind of a leap of faith to partner with somebody and just give away half of the business, but I'm really, really glad that I did because I definitely am positive it was the correct move now because you just need constant reinforcement of these ideas. It's just nobody owns it immediately.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into a few images of just snapshots within the app. The first one is the view for coaches or instructors when they log in. You see a dashboard with all of your players listed, right? So I've blacked out the names of this specific team. However, this is what it looks like, and I wanted to highlight a couple of things that I think are very powerful and very cool. First and foremost, we added this Tiger 5 data last spring of last year, which is great, right? Everybody kind of understands the Tiger 5, and now we've got uh, data to give you guidance on what you're doing well and what you're doing poorly in the Tiger 5 relative to your peers. And to that note, if I wanted to explain what the highlighting mechanisms and how they worked on this page, because a lot of players, I think, confuse or don't quite understand exactly what they mean. So if we look at player one here, P1, we see he's got some red and some green, and we see his scoring average here is 73.97. What that means is he is scoring 73.97. So he's going to be compared to rounds that all shot between 72 to 74. And that's what the highlighting mechanism illustrates. It shows you what he did well and what he did poorly relative to that specific peer group. So if you see his strokes gained putting is objectively better than player two, but player two's is highlighted red. And because he is
Player two is highlighted green.
I'm sorry, player two is highlighted green because he is being compared to a peer group that is 4 strokes worse. And so even though he is actually a worse putter than player one, he's actually better than his peer group at putting. And so this is just a great way for coaches to get instant feedback on the strengths and the weaknesses of their players and potential things that they need to be working on.
And the reason I feel like I can say this comparison mechanism is brilliant is because it wasn't my idea. I actually created the entire Decade app at a Tony Robbins Business Mastery seminar back in 2016. And they had a guy there that was pitching a virtual CFO software. And one of the things he was showing was on whatever accounting statement it was, but if your days receivable of accounts was 90 days and your industry standard is 60, he actually gave you just a big red X here. And he was actually really funny. He spoke with this big Texas drawing. He's like, what does a red X mean on a treasure map? It means look here, dummy. And I just thought that was brilliant. And so that's why we created this, where, as Alex said, you've got for this player right here, he's averaging 75.14. So his peer group is the 75 to 77 uh, peer. And so anywhere that he's got that circle with a dot in it means he's performing in line with where he should be. But that red X, look here, dummy, he's got too many three putts going on per round, as opposed to even bogeys inside 150 is pretty impressive. He's all the way down there in the 68 and better category. He's not making hardly any bogeys inside 150. So it's a pretty impressive thing going on right here. And I know Alex is about to say this, but I'm going to go ahead and since I'm rolling. This is actually just a static image where if you were actually in the app, you could scroll down and you would start seeing greens and regulation and all the different buckets, proximities, all kinds of different statistics. And I ordered these in a very specific way when I created it, so that way you need to be looking for either clusters of red X's. So if you get into the approach shot area and there's like 3 or 4 red X's out of 7 or so statistics, just kind of a way to kind of highlight, hey, this is the problem here. Or any red X that is 2 peer groups to the right. So this guy again, his peer group is 75 to 77. So if he was actually doing something more appropriate to an 82 shooter, he would actually get 2 X's out there to the right. And so I want you looking for clusters of red X's or any X that is 2 units to or 2 peer groups to the right. That's where you're really losing value for yourself because the definition of improvement isn't making some greens and regulation arbitrarily number go up. It's improving your total score against yourself. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. And so we're looking for where you are struggling specifically.
Yeah, and just to echo what Scott said, this page is what players look at on their individual page. So if I log into my Decade account, this is what my screen looks like. The previous screen is for a coach where he's got an entire roster of players. What I'm going to touch on next is some of the cool aggregation reports and features that we have for coaches who properly use our tournament setup feature. And so, what coaches should do is when their season begins, or hopefully weeks beforehand, they go in and they set up their schedule. And when you go in and set up your schedule, it allows the system to properly map all of your players' data together, which then gives you the ability to create these types of reports. So when a player goes to enter in their data, it will prompt them and say, are you entering in round one for NCAA regionals? The player clicks yes, and then now that data is going to be properly routed over so that you have the ability and luxury to see graphs like this. So this graph is great because what it does is it's a great snapshot for coaches, and I know a lot of coaches like to use this actually between rounds. So they'll get their player to put their data in after round one or after day one, and then they get some instant feedback on potential weak areas or things that they can try to improve upon before the final day of your typical 2 day tournament in college. And so this one shows you approach shot performance. Top graph illustrates the distribution and frequency of approach shots from various distances. Orange indicates shots from the rough, blue indicates shots from the fairway and tee. And then additionally, the bottom part is great because it really shows you it's the green and regulation success from the various lies. And again, this just gives you a great idea of where your team may be struggling or underperforming. So, example here, you see the team hit 50% of greens from 71 to 80 yards in the fairway. Like, that's probably a point to dig into deeper and figure out what was the root cause, right? 71, 90 yards, they hit about 55% of total greens. So again, quick snapshot. It's about giving the coach good feedback, but also efficient feedback. The next slide, same thing, except it's about putting, right? So we've got a distribution of putting, percentage of putts hold from various distance buckets, and then also it tells you how many putts were made, or I'm sorry, how many putts were hit from various starting distance buckets. So you can see here, the green is three putt performance, and you can see they looks like they might have had a three putt from 3 to 5 feet, which is probably something worth looking into. But again, great feedback for the coaches. I think Scott can also say that he's worked with many coaches that use this as a really quick way to adapt and maybe reconsider or reevaluate your strategy going into the final day.
People ask me all the time, what's the lowest hanging fruit for getting better? And it's just putting. I mean, to fix your swing or to fix your stroke or anything like that takes a lot of time. But if you can get these players, your players, these players, if you can get your players to really start focusing in on the importance of speed control, it is just comical to me how quickly putting can improve. And that'll get back to what we'll talk about here in a second, just the idea of leaving a certain amount of percentage of putts short. If you just really start harping on your team, no good team puts bad. I mean, and it's
Period.
easy. You don't have to putt good. You just don't have to putt. You just can't putt bad. And getting a team to not putt bad is and this is coming from a guy who the U.S. Open that I played in, I had 36 putts each day. So for me to sit here and confidently say it's not that hard to not be terrible at putting, that comes back to understanding why speed control is so important. And all of these graphs are just created in trying to give you ammunition to use against your players to say, look here, dummy, this is the problem. Let's fix this, and here's how we fix it.
Yeah, and the last slide is simply a table that does aggregation reports by round. So whether you're using this in the middle of a tournament or you're using this post-tournament as an evaluatory tool when you're talking about the event with your players, this is a great way to just get a sense of how the team did overall, round by round, green and regulation performance, scrambling frequency and success, sand saves, all of the data very easily at your hands. And yeah, again, great tool to use when you are trying to tell the team what they did poorly and what they did well after an event. And then speaking to that, a great tool within the program is this GPS overlay. So as your players enter stats in using the GPS entry, they drag these little dots to indicate where their shots were. And the purpose of this is to really provide context for coaches as to how was the par made, how was the bogey made, and shed some light on exactly what might have happened on the hole. And Scott, I think you wanted to share how you've seen coaches utilize this feature.
Well, then you can parse it down to the player spotlight there, where you can look at each player individually. Obviously, this starts to look a little bit messy when you've got all five uh, indicators on one slide. But let's pretend that guy that hit it into the junk left, if all of a sudden his next indicator was just about 20 feet in front of him instead of successfully getting it into the fairway, that would be a pretty good indication of like, hey, Bob, did you really have a shot here or did you try to force something? How was your patience? How was your discipline? This slide right here is, to be perfectly honest, the only reason I still suggest college teams use the full GPS data entry instead of our streamlined Tiger 5 entry, because you're in a spot where you're really trying to coach these players up on a daily basis, really trying to dig into the decision making. And without actually seeing stroke level detail, I don't really care. The stroke level detail gives us our strokes gain driving and approach numbers. There's enough flaws with that but this right here, all the best college coaches, and I started to name one by name, but all of the best college coaches tell me they use this one just just hammer on players after rounds. What happened here? What happened here? I do think that taking your time at dinner and going through, a couple of key shots with each player, going through their Tiger 5 mistakes is absolutely the way to take your time, over the course of an hour-long dinner with everyone and really understanding where they did hit shots to and what their thought process was and how they got themselves in and or out of trouble or left themselves in trouble is, again, next to putting better and actually ahead of putting better. This is the freest money in golf. Just getting guys to stop doing stupid stuff. Again, I don't need you to do smart stuff. Just don't do stupid stuff.
Yeah, and another really cool feature is there is a tab called Coaching Moments, and we've created some flags. So anytime certain attributes of a shot are met, it automatically ports over here. And again, it's all about making coaching, identifying potential mistakes or leaks as efficient as possible. And so Coaching Moments, this is just an example of one of the triggers, right? Approach shot missed by 15% or more of distance. This might be something, it might not, but again, it's meant to just present you with something to dig a bit deeper into.
And to speak to that, so let's say that image on the bottom there. Here we've got a guy that's the pin's on the right, and he has missed this ball a billion yards left. If I were a coach and looked at this, I'd be like, you know what, John? You like drawing the ball. You were 160 here. Were you trying to hit a little floaty fade into that right pin, trying to get a better look at birdie and double crossed it over there left? Hey, nice chip shot, but we shouldn't have had that chip shot in the first place. Our stock draw here should be started at the pin and falling right towards the middle of the green. The screen looks relatively normal sized. These are the spots where if I were a college coach, I would use at least an hour of my weekly coaching time, depending on what division you're in, blah, 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 blah. But I would use at least an hour of my coaching time sitting down with each player after a tournament and going through the flags that coachable moments finds, which again, approach shot missed by 15% or more of the distance. Another one is recovery shot didn't cover more than 50% of the distance. So if you were 180 and in the trees and you didn't get it inside of 90 yards, I'm going to assume maybe you hit a tree. I mean, maybe. Again, it might have been like you just laid it up to 120, which is perfectly fine. A lot of times you're like, oh, that's what happened. Let's just move on. But it's just a way to flag these little things of like, this is what I would ask a player about. All Tiger 5 mistakes are going to get flagged, and mental scorecard mistakes, meaning the player said, I wasn't quite committed to what I was trying to do there. I truly believe that if we can all agree, I'm going to say this probably 6 more times during during the webinar. If we can all agree, we feel like we should have shot lower every time we played. I want to find those shots that you actually could have avoided. The little can saying for that one is it's far easier to intentionally avoid bogey than it is to intentionally make birdie. We're trying to find the accidental bogeys and worse. And this one specifically right here on hole 13, the bottom one, this would not have been flagged as a Tiger 5 mistake because the guy saved par. But I would be really curious to know what happened on that second shot right there. I guess it's kind of a fail safe for, hey, all right, Bob, you got lucky. You didn't make bogey here, but we probably should not have done whatever we did here.
Yeah, good stuff. And the next slide, this is again an example of the type of aggregation reports that you can get for your entire team for an entire season. So now we're taking a step back from just looking at a tournament, and now we're looking at an entire season. And this report's great, right? It shows you the number of putts compared to first putt distance. And once again, it's meant to provide some indications of weaknesses of the team, right? So you can see here, we've got a 26% three putt rate from 40 plus feet. Not the best, right? And again, you can kind of look at this and say, okay, we probably need to work on our speed control here. We need to make sure that our players have the proper mindset and approach when facing a lag putt and understanding kind of what the goals and objectives are when they're that far away from the hole. And then the bottom part just kind of same thing, just in a different way. It tells you sort of the average leave by distance. And again, just helpful to get a sense of kind of what your players are leaving themselves after their first putt.
And this is the one specifically that I did not realize that the program does. And I've actually told Chris that I want to on that lag putt leave average. I also want to add in there uh, short percentage because I feel like if we've got a terrible 40 foot plus three putt rate and we're only leaving 30% of our first putt short, or to be perfectly honest, 70% of our first putt short. Like it's not just this unilateral this way. If it's 50-50, it's like, all right, guys, we probably need to work on our speed control. We're blanketing the hole properly. We need to work on our speed control to make that second putt shorter, and or if our this is where you've got to look at any statistic in isolation doesn't tell you much. You've got to be able to look at combinations of them. So if we are actually leaving half of our putts short from outside 40 feet, well, and then we go look at our 3 to 5 foot make rate, and it's not good. Well, that's probably what we need to focus our time on are these short putts. Again, that would be more block practice stroke type work. Or if we're doing it, but our average second putt is 9 feet, well, man, we need to get that down closer to 4 feet, and then we'll be doing better.
Yeah. And so now we're going to jump into another feature of the app, which is immensely popular, and that's our practice combines. We have a couple combines that are awesome, that are immensely popular. The first one is our sim putting rounds. The sim putting basically takes the most common distances you see over the course of an 18 hole round of golf and randomizes it and kind of gamifies it as well and allows you to be on a putting green. It spits out how long your putt should be. You're keeping score, and then we keep the historical data to kind of help you build a benchmark of where your putting is at and continue to improve off of that. And then the second one is the line test, which Scott, can you kind of expand upon what exactly that is and what it's working and telling you?
Yeah, each one of the combines was actually created by Chris Zambry while he was the USC head coach. Obviously, won National College Coach of the Year. Justin Suh, Jamie Lovemark. He's now obviously the head coach of the USGA's national team. He created all of these, and he's actually told me he feels like he could pick his team better from their results in the line test than their actual scoring average. He's like the rest of the scoring average, like I can coach that up, and there's a lot of noise in that. But basically, can you get your golf ball started online, which sounds like a very trivial thing to do, but it's actually a little bit harder than you would think. So what it does is it tells you, what club do you hit closest to 140. Let's pretend that's a 9 iron for me. Then it'll ask you to hit pitching wedge 9 iron, 8 iron, 7 iron, pitching wedge 9. You hit those four clubs in a row 20 times, so five with each club, and it's purely measuring how far offline left and right those shots are. And then that gives you a score for what your line number was. And I'm a guy, I just like practicing. I don't need to gamify practice or try to add pressure, but I will have to admit, the first time when I'm like, okay, Zammer, I'm thinking about bringing these in here, let me do them. I'll admit, like it got a little bit more intense the last 3 to 6 shots if I had a good score going of wanting to try to finish that off. Again, I really do believe it's pretty cool, but the sim putting one specifically, I think is just absolute gold. If you've got a kid that just cannot comprehend leaving putt short. And I'm such a broken record. I feel like this is all I talk about on Instagram right now. So sorry. But if you've got a kid that cannot contemplate leaving a putt short from 16 feet, what you need to do is run this. It would be very difficult to take that kid out in a qualifying round or a tournament round and say, hey, buddy, just try to lag it from 15 to 20 feet for me. And let's just see if it works out because you would have to play golf for like 3 or 4 weeks to get enough data in that bucket to really know. But with this simulated putting thing, you can go run 10 simulated putting rounds and just say, from outside 15 feet, I want you to tap your next putt in. And let's just see what your make rate is. Let's see what your strokes gain, what your scores are like, because that's what's going to give the confidence to the kid be like, I can't believe this, but I'm actually making a bunch of putts from 18 feet simply by trying to tap the next one in. And across the board, you will see the kids' average putting number, their average sim round score go down when trying to do this. Maybe they want to try heads up putting. Maybe they want to try an arm lock or a claw. this allows you to try, okay, does it work better? And you can really start very quickly over the course of a week. You can easily run 30 or 40 of these simulated putting rounds and start getting total scores as to whether or not it actually is helping you or not. And the one thing that Alex and I, after our first attempt at making this video that we didn't record very well, the one thing that we talked about was I want to make what we're going to call money zone simulated putting. So we're going to give you putts from 3 to 15 feet, and I'm going to keep it at 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15 feet. So it's just easy to pace. Um, and then we're going to let you just run the most important zone for separating yourself on the PGA Tour, it's just assumed everyone can two putt fairly often from 20 to 40 feet. So it's hard to differentiate yourself in a zone where kind of everyone, no one's making a whole lot, no one's three putting a whole lot. You just hit it to 28 feet and two putted a whole bunch. But the best putters on the PGA Tour separate themselves the most from 5 to technically 12 feet, but from 5 to 15 feet. That's where it really counts. And so we want to learn something like tour read or aim point. Let's work on our reads. Let's work on our speed. And so this is really going to give us some information. What is your make rate doing in the zone that really counts?
Yeah.
Really excited about that. I really am excited about that one.
Yeah, and the combines, I tell you, a lot of the teams I work with, they live here, right? The top players, they're doing simulated putting rounds, like you said, over and over and over again. They're on the putting green, they're trying different ways, whether, like you said, it's heads up putting, it's different putting grips, it's ball position, it's tempo, it's putting with the metronome,
It's
anything.
intention. I
Yeah,
mean, intention of
absolutely.
making. I mean,
Yeah, all of that stuff is the best players are using these, so it works. The next thing I just wanted to quickly highlight, kind of I'd say the bread and butter of Decade is our video library. We've got an extremely robust library that covers everything from, tee game to putting to mental to understanding shot patterns, all of that stuff, and a very, very robust library of videos. And that is available to all players. You can kind of watch it at your leisure. And then additionally, we have curated content. So as you're putting in data, we have an algorithm that recommends certain things that you may want to watch to help improve or better understand certain concepts. So, again, our video library I feel like is also underutilized, but all the videos are there and highly encourage both coaches and players to kind of slowly go through it and really get a true understanding of the concepts behind a lot of what Scott and I are constantly parroting on social media.
personally, if I were a college coach, and again, I don't know the exact rules, I think you get 20 hours a week. I could be wrong on that depending on what division you're in or whatever. But if I were a college coach and we all agree, we all waste shots every day, if you putt bad, you're going to go practice your putting for hours on end. I don't understand why the direct correlation isn't there with if we score poorly, we should go spend hours a week working on our scoring. Like it's so obvious to me that that's the case. And so, literally, in my opinion, taking your first week or two and the actual tutorial content, which is getting started, mental approach, tee shots, putting, those things across the top, that's about 3.5, maybe 4 hours of content. I would sit down and watch that with your team. And I would take, if that's, let's just say that's 3 hours of content, I would take 6 hours to watch it. I would be pausing it. I would be letting the kids ask questions. I would be emphasizing things that resonate with me as a coach. That is how I would spend the vast majority. And I would do it every single semester to where the guys, once they've been in school with you for 4 years, they've heard this 8 times. I would quite literally make them do it every single time because it's that repetition that makes you own the information. And if I caught someone who's already heard it 3 times sleeping, I would make them go sprint a couple hundred yards. It's that important in order to stop wasting these shots because at the NCAA championship, every single year, it is one or two shots out of 1,100-ish shots that keep the ninth place team from catching the eighth place team to make match play. And once you're in match play, anything can happen. And so, really understanding, we're talking 0.05%. One shot over 1,160 shots is nothing. And getting people to understand this is how we are going to, I mean, just cruise into match play. I hate saying it as though it's that easy, but if you look back over the course of 5 rounds, counting four over 4 days, that's 16 rounds of golf. And just a shot or two is most likely what's going to separate those bubble teams. You have to spend as much time talking about course management strategy and mindset as you do the actual playing of the game. the physical side, that is.
Yeah. And I always say, you go on a driving range at a college event, everybody's got a great swing. You'd think everybody's a tour pro with how good these kids hit it. And, the separators oftentimes the decision making, the strategy. Like obviously everybody's going to hit some poor shots, but over the course of 3 rounds, like the player that makes the least mistakes is honestly typically going to probably finish top 15 if they play mediocre. And then, if they play well, they're probably running away with it. Um, Next slide, I just wanted to highlight the driving target feature within Decade. I think a lot of people also don't know this exists. This is great because it really allows you the ability to, I view preparation for events as important as drilling or, it's like watching film for an NFL player, right? I don't understand players who go to a course blind and don't make their practice rounds more efficient. And when you have the Decade app, it couldn't be easier. So just a quick explanation of how this is. This is Muirfield Village #1, and this is from the up tees. So this was for a ladies event, and you set your three different distances. So in this example, I have 225, 245, and 260. This is the
The
200.
numbers below that are the width of the tee also. What was it that you called again? I like
I
that.
call them wings. So these
The
little white
wings.
wings show you kind of your cone, right? So this is like a 55-yard dispersion at 260. That's what the little white wings indicate. And you just click and drag it. So I can't do it because this is a static image, but when you're within the app, you're able to just drag this line left and right and really get a nice visual confirmation of exactly how much width you have to land your tee shot. And, coaches and players oftentimes forget that like golf course architects, they're designing courses to visually trick you, right? They're not your ally. They're out there to really deceive you. And so when you're doing this type of prep work and you're giving yourself the objective data that says, okay, even though it looks like I may not have enough room to land three-wooder driver in this space, I've done the prep work to know that there is indeed enough, 55 yards of dispersion here that as long as I pick my committed target and I make a quality strike, my ball will be okay.
And what I see the best college programs doing now, because tee shots are just so important, is let's just say we're a female college coach. I would have out there on the range, maybe just some oil drums that are 50 yards apart at 260. And I would have everyone like if you set them out there, it's kind of hard from the different angles of the tee box to see them the same. I would have everyone practice their driving in like the middle three stalls into this zone because what we're trying to accomplish is getting you also to get confidence of, you know what, this is kind of a tight, intimidating tee shot, but you know what, I hit it inside of those oil drums 75, 80, 90% of the time, whatever that number is. If it's 75, you know what, this probably isn't driver. If it's up there at 90, if I make it, as Alex is saying, a good committed swing, I'm probably going to be okay the vast majority of the time. And so now we start taking those ideas out and laying them over the course. And it's just, I created this with the wings because I was playing a practice round with a guy who just actually just casual golf. It was the first time I ever saw one of those other GPS apps where you just had, like, you could just put the point out there at however far. And I was like, this is cool, but it was a dogleg left par five, and there was houses left and a little creek on the right. And I'm like, man, I can just tell that's somewhere between 60-ish yards, maybe 65, but it's kind of narrow. But I feel like there's enough. And all of a sudden I was like, this thing needs little wings on it so that way you can see in real time while I'm playing golf. So yes, you can use this on the computer before you play your practice round, but also you can use it in real time while you're out there on the course. And what you'll start seeing then is like this hole right here, #1 at Muirfield. I can tell you it is driver right over the left lip of the first bunker. Now we can just try to get into our mindset that we have on the driving range of I'm not thinking don't go left and don't go right. I'm just saying send it right there at that corner. Kind of cross my fingers. But if I drop back from driver here, it's not like I eliminate any of the bunkers, just a different bunker is in play. And that's obviously what we teach you in the tutorial content on the driving side of the app. But really understanding how to use these driving targets because we're trying to play the most efficient practice rounds possible. I want you playing practice rounds really aggressive because it's far easier to get out there and be like, well, that wasn't driver and come backwards rather than hitting a 3-wood in a practice round and then thinking, could I have gotten away with driver there? This is Zalatoris, the second U.S. amateur I caddied for Matt up in Chicago, the one that Bryson won. We were on this par four that had kind of a crossing hazard that it seemed like it was like 260-ish. And I told him to hit a hybrid. He's like, I'm going to hit it in the water. And I'm like, maybe. And he's like, it's a 4 iron. I'm like, just hit hybrid. And he hit it right in the water. I'm like, cool, it's a 4 iron. But if he did a foreign 30 yards short of the water, I would have been wondering, can he get away with a hybrid here? Sorry about your golf ball, Will, but it is definitely not a hybrid.
Yeah, good stuff. And the last thing we're going to kind of touch on within the app is immensely popular are yardage books. For those who may not know, we have a global yardage book library where you can go in, you can download both files that are compatible with having them on your phone and files that you can print. You go in, you customize your yardage book, you pick which tees you're playing, and then you also build three driving rings. So it's kind of a recreation of these three numbers in the upper right from the driving target. For men, I typically use like 320 yards to kind of illustrate driver with rollout, 300 to kind of illustrate driver carry, and then like 270 to sort of be what your three wood is. And that's what these three blue lines are, right? So this is from the back tees. You can see it illustrates what the fairway width is at each of these driving rings. And so this outer ring is 300 yards off of the back tee box. And then we've got 275 and we've got 250. And again, it shows you exactly how many yards you need to take off if you happen to be playing a course where the tees are moved up or if the tournament organizer is moving around the tees, gives you all of that information. And then if there were, say, a fairway bunker here, it does have the number to reach the front end and the back side of the bunker, so you can be confident in that. And then we've got the rings to illustrate where the 100 yards to the green, 120. We've got our decade numbers, and then we've got this. The only thing that our yardage books may lack compared to others is we don't have green slope, but we do have. What's important is the yardage lines, right? So we know exactly how deep this green is, and then we've got these boxes which are intended to, during your practice round, you should be doing your assessments and evaluations of decade modifiers, and that's what these boxes are meant to do. All in all, it's just to provide you with a more efficient decision making when you're on the golf course in the moment between the ropes, when you may feel pressure. It's about organizing your thoughts and coming to the right decision as quickly and efficiently as possible.
And the rings, it's not like I hit my driver 310. Well, you don't know if this is into the wind, downwind, uphill, downwind, downhill, soft, fast. We're just trying to give you some general ideas to see. And the reason I like what Alex said there of using like 270, 300, 330, whatever those numbers are, to where it's kind of like what my three wood is out to like my longest driver. Because once it's less than your three wood, like it's just kind of obvious it's a two iron. Like it, I don't need to know. Very rarely you're supposed to hit like a six iron off of a tee box. So I really want to look at those clubs with a head cover, what those things look like. But then to actually kind of point out a little bit of what Alex said about the green slopes, I'm not a fan of trying to use green books anyways, because greens change, the fringes change. Anything near a bunker gets more sand, the elevation changes. But when Bryson got in trouble, if you remember however many years ago with the PGA Tour, because he was using a compass, what he was actually doing was rather than just using the pin sheet and saying, okay, this is 10 on and 5 from the left, so here's my little spot, that's approximately correct, like within 3 or 4 feet. What Bryson was actually doing was using that compass to triangulate off of sprinkler heads because that is a fixed object that is in PGA Tour green books for sure. And so, really understanding that unless when you're trying to use a green book for your green reading, unless you have the pin in the exact spot that it is and your ball in the exact spot that it is, it's just kind of approximately correct, anyways. Not to mention, when was the last time they actually scanned this green? It might not have been for 5 years ago, but one of the arguments I got into with Straka originally was they dropped survey date that used to have the survey date in the book, and then they realized this survey date is 6 years old. I should probably get rid of this because this book is technically no longer useful. I mean, if we're trying to think that it is that exactly correct, then we should be scanning it every single year. And obviously, that's just not feasible. And so there's just certain things, man, we need to learn again, aim point, tour read. I'm a big fan of using those systems over green books simply for that reason.
Yeah, and the jumping on to the next topic, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the added features that some college teams kind of use, right? So this is stuff that I actually do on the side, that where I help out some teams, and I just wanted to kind of illustrate and show some coaches who may not know, like this is the level of detail and preparation that a lot of the top teams are doing, and I thought it might be fun to share. So the first one is these tee packets. not too dissimilar from the driving target slide earlier, but just a little cleaner presentation, right? And these are the type of books that some schools are getting before their practice round, and they give their players these books. They go out, they have a much more efficient practice round. They're able to kind of save their energy, conserve the time to dedicate it more to kind of greenside shots. They get up on the tee box. They've got a really clear idea of kind of what the target is that they should be aiming at off the tee. Specific characteristics of the hole are oftentimes highlighted, where it might be like hit your longest club that can't reach a fairway bunker out here, or notice that it's a very narrow green, so the pin location is largely irrelevant, and what's strokes gained is just going to be hitting the green. These types of things to provide a little more clarity for players when they are trying to absorb the whole, right? Players only get one practice round, and it's a lot of information to download. And so these types of materials can really aid them in, again, energy conservation and allowing themselves to focus on some of the, call it the more important things like the around the green areas and such. Um,
And I'll brag on Alex. Some of the teams that he worked with this year had definitely the best college seasons in D1 golf. I have nothing to do with this. This is entirely him on the side, and I cannot recommend. Alex is like, dude, I don't have much time, but I cannot recommend. I wish I had time to do this a little bit more, but because it is actually really fun digging in and trying to help teams specifically. But Alex is really, really good at this. He's a former, if you guys don't know, he's a former poker professional. The Decade app, the video content is actually based off of a website that he owned back in the early 2000s in the poker boom. I would have never thought to voice over screencasting aside from actually being a member of Alex's website back in the day 20 plus years ago. So highly recommend you reaching out to him. Super smart, super diligent guy.
It's very kind. And the other example, this is some of the approach targets that I do for players and coaches. And again, I get the pin sheet, and it's just about building frameworks to provide your player some guidelines when they're in the middle of the round, right? Like the players are emotional, they might not necessarily be thinking straight, they might be tired, whatever. And this is just a good way to rein them in, provide some guardrails so that they can start using these approach targets and then build it off of their immediate circumstance. So, for example, maybe you hit a perfect drive and the target is the red dot. Easy peasy. But maybe you're like slightly in the rough, you're going into the wind, but you have an idea of about where your target should be, and then you can make some slight deviations off of it. And so this is just some information that like I provide to the coaches, and it's like, hey, here are the things to be aware of. I might specifically call out certain holes where it's like, listen, this is a sucker pin, players shouldn't be going at it. This I try to forecast the approach distance in on every hole, and really just give the coaches and players the proper playbook to get to the right decision as quickly as possible.
And what he's saying there is that, like, if I'm playing Champions Tour qualifying and number one is 440 and I hit a good drive, like I know I'm going to have about 140. You really can, once you understand Decade and you have the pin sheet, you really can kind of choose your target in advance to where this just becomes very easy. And this is, a guy like Maverick Neal. I started out to say what I'm going to say. Maverick used to, whenever we were working together, he would literally put on there like five right, six left. Like, again, if we can all agree that making decisions on the golf course in real time is hard to do objectively without emotion, there's absolutely no reason you can't get to the course 20 minutes earlier than you planned on and sit down with the pin sheet and your yardage book and just be like, if I'm in the fairway, this is probably approximately where my target should be. I truly believe you can pick out your targets before you even tee it up. And now it is just completely emotionless. We're just running a script. And I've got a couple of announcers that are like, I play better with motion. Like, no, you don't. Like, you play worse without emotion. I'll give you that. But you can't play better than you are just because you're having emotional thoughts now. It's just not how it works. Emotions can only cloud judgment.
Yeah, and some might be wondering what's the difference between the red dots and the blue dots. The blue dots are just merely second shots for par fives. So if the player happens to be in a position that they can go for the green in two, the blue dot is kind of where they should be aiming with their second shot.
So number one specifically, that's obviously all the way over to the right. You can barely see off to the left. There's a water hazard. So this shot from the distance you would be expecting, the target winds up becoming the right edge of the green.
Exactly. And so to wrap things up, I wanted to kind of just talk about a few case studies, right? Like I said, I work with a lot of college teams, and I thought it might be fun to just illustrate some of the contrast in their performance as they've kind of gotten more quote unquote decadey, and kind of reinforces a lot of the ideas and some of the pushback that Scott and I get on social media from players who may think that decade doesn't amount to better scores. So
Yeah.
the first team I wanted to talk about, this I started working with them in the fall or in the spring, and I pulled up their fall numbers with their spring numbers, and I think it's really, really cool because one of the arguments against Decade, or people like to say, is I'm not going to make any birdies if I'm not quote unquote aiming at all the flags. And the data, surprise, surprise, says otherwise. So this is this team, they use the pin dots, and so I know that they weren't aiming at every flag, if any flags at all. And just look at this. Their birdie percentage and performance actually went up. This is all relative to the field average for each event. So their birdie performance held steady, slightly improved, and then you can see their bogey rate and their double bogey rate plummeted, right? So they got twice as good at avoiding bogeys and about twice as good at avoiding doubles while maintaining their birdie rate. And just think about mathematically what that does for your scoring average. Just awesome, awesome stuff.
Golf at all level is about at all levels is about making fewer mistakes. It is not about making more birdies. And one of the things a couple of great college coaches were telling me about earlier last year was they run qualifying where they actually don't even count birdies and eagles. And at first I was like, that's insane. And the more I thought about it over the next 24 hours, I was like, you 100%, I guarantee you, you would find your best five players by playing where only your bogey and higher counts because, as I said earlier, it's easier to intentionally not make bogeys than it is to intentionally make birdies. But the real gold of that exercise is the players will realize they're still going to make birdies, even while their number one objective is avoiding bogey. They're still going to hit it to 15 feet. They still have to hit the putt. It's not like you just pick it up. Then I want you to lag it and tap in your next one. You still will make some of those. You still will get it up and around par fives and two. Just because bogey avoidance is my number one goal does not mean I just try to lay it up to 100. From 240, if I'm supposed to be getting up and around the green, I should still be doing that. That's the proper bogey avoidance math. That's the proper birdie rate math. They've got to see it's kind of like the simulated putting round allows them to tinker with the idea of different putting methods. Playing a qualifying where you don't count birdies and eagles is a really powerful way to prove to them, dude, you're still going to make some birdies, I promise. It's going to happen, but we're going to plummet our bogey rate, which is again exactly at all levels of the game, avoiding bogeys. Even on the PGA Tour, you're going to improve your score more by avoiding bogeys than making more birdies. Period.
Period. And this is the second team, and we really focused on getting better at putting speed, right? Their players largely were way too aggressive with their putting, and so I told the coach, like, listen, just put away everything but the putter for a couple practices and really, really hone in on distance dispersion and getting a feel for understanding what leaves should look like with different putting distances. And you can see their putting avoidance, three putt avoidance, really, really reflected that improvement. And their scoring average got cut in half. And again, double avoidance. That's so key too, is when you're in trouble, get yourself back in position, right? When you miss the green, make sure your next shot is with a putter, right? Those types of things to really remove the catastrophic mistakes that are just so difficult to overcome, right? Like if you lose half a stroke over a hole, right? A hole's playing at a 4.5 average and you make a bogey, no big deal. You lost half a stroke, make an 8 footer later in the round, all is well. It's when you make those doubles, triples, and I mean, we watched it in NCAA Nationals, just how many kids were trying to take on that hero shot, trying to hit that low percentage, high risk, low reward, really. It's like I'm going to pull off this hero shot to hit it to 10 feet. Big deal, right? So, reprogramming your kids and getting them to change their mindset when they're out of position is such a powerful, powerful thing for kids to learn on the golf course.
And for everyone to see that math on the three putt avoidance, if you three putt 8% of the time over 18 holes, that's 1.44 three putts per 18 holes. If you drop that to 3.2%, that's 0.576 three putts per 18 holes. Literally, just by stopping three putting, got almost a full shot better per player Now we take that out times four. It's literally 3.5 shots simply by three putting less. And as I always say, like you can't make enough putts to offset three putting that much less. So like the fear is I'm going to make fewer putts by just trying to not three putt. Cool. Let's pretend you don't make any more. You can't offset making 3.5, improving by 3.5 putts in three putt avoidance. Like it's just a staggering number. Now let's take that out times three rounds. It's literally 12 or 13 shots simply by not three putting.
Low-hanging fruit indeed.
Dang, that's incredible when you
Yeah.
really think about it.
And then the last slide is just an individual that I've known for a long time and we've worked together. These we kind of had a little kumbaya moment in the winter to revisit, like Scott said, these kids, they hear things, you work with them, and then over time, that knowledge kind of eventually atrophies, right? They lose their ways, so to speak, and little tune-ups are always healthy. And so this was didn't have a great fall. I mean, a good fall, but by his standards, not the best. And then we kind of reconnected and worked a bit in the spring, and this was just a reflection of kind of his stats. And you can see like biggest thing, his par five scoring improved pretty considerably. He didn't putt nearly as well as he did in the fall, but his scoring average still went down by almost a full stroke. And his bogey percentage lowered a bit. And again, just cleaning up on the margins, right? It wasn't anything drastic, but it was getting a little too aggressive with his wedge approach shots, not quite being as disciplined with selecting targets and such. And in the collective, right, in the aggregate over 54 holes, like when you improve these little incremental things, it leads to some really great things. So, the last thing is just simply pricing, right? For college teams, I know we've talked a lot about it from the college coach's perspective. This is what the pricing structure looks like for Decade. If you guys are interested, please reach out to me. Scott and I would both contend that Decade is the best product on the market if you're looking to get your kids to learn how to play proper golf. Um, you know, I I'm obviously a bit biased, but we think what we have to offer just doesn't exist anywhere else.
Well, we're in a difficult spot because Clipped and Straka have come in and thrown a lot of money to a lot of people. And like we're just a couple of dudes trying to teach people how to shoot lower scores. And at the end of the day, though, we had several big college programs that left us this year for Clipped, and they came back after two tournaments saying, "We please take me back." Literally, one of the biggest names in college golf tucked his tail and called me, was like, "Will you take me back?" I'm like, "Of course, coach." But it is just amazing how it's not about just stats. It's about what to do with the stats. Numbers are great. I mean, stats are awesome, but how do we actually parlay that into shooting lower scores? And that's the point of Decade. I created this after helping Zalatoris. I created it before helping Zalatoris, turned it into a product because of helping Zalatoris. But Will sent me a text after the final round of the Texas Amateur in 2014 that just said, "Dude, I'll never be able to thank you enough. You've given me 25 years of experience in 5 days." That's the whole reason I called it Decade, was saying we're going to try to take decades off your learning curve. And I feel silly saying it because it's my product, but I really believe it's by far the best thing that's happened to golf in a long time for just helping people score, but more importantly, have a little bit more fun on the course, not get quite as emotional, which is why a lot of scores go down. It's just a really cool deal, and I really would welcome everyone coming on board. It's been a lot of fun, this 10-year journey now.
Yeah, and we appreciate you guys hanging in there for those that are still watching. I hope that Scott and I kind of highlighted some of the ways that you're able to leverage a lot of the features within Decade. Maybe we unveiled something that maybe you didn't know existed within the app. But we do appreciate all the support. We always love watching NCAAs and having a rooting interest for a lot of teams that are in there that we work closely with. So that's always a thrill. And anything else to add, Scott, before we wrap
Nope.
up?
It was a lot of fun watching the NCAAs this year with a little skin in the game. That was cool.
Yeah. So thanks for watching, guys, and please reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks.